in New Orleans.
I can see clearly now.
Clearly, CBS Mornings.
Weekdays on CBS.
Yeah!
Tony, coming?
No, I'm gonna stick around for an hour.
Hey!
CBS Mornings Plus with Adriana Diaz and Tony DeCopel, right after CBS Mornings.
It's just like mornings.
Plus fun.
Oh, yeah, it's gonna be a bright, sunshiny day.
The all-new CBS Evening News.
Lay is facing up to $1 million in tariff payments this year alone.
Zhou-Ling, is Lay going to be able to keep her workers under these conditions?
We don't have the same options as large businesses.
Can your business survive this?
If this is the end of my American dream, I'm going to go down swinging.
Hello, I'm Norah O'Donnell with a special CBS News live event for an important conversation around what could be a historic peace deal in the Middle East. Thousands of people are making the long walk home in Gaza with the ceasefire in effect, and the countdown clock is on for Hamas to return the hostages taken from Israel. All of this in an effort to end the two-year war. Joining us now are two of America's most respected diplomats who have been working towards peace in the Middle East for decades. Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State in the Obama administration, and Condoleezza Rice was Secretary of State in the George W. Bush administration. Secretaries, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Secretary Clinton, let me start with you. Does this diplomatic breakthrough make you hopeful about what's next?
Norah, it does. It's a really significant first step, and I really commend President Trump and his administration, as well as Arab leaders in the region, for making the commitment to the 20-point plan and seeing a path forward for what's often called the day after. Most importantly, the conflict hopefully will end with the ceasefire. The hostages will be returned. And then the very hard work of rebuilding Gaza, of finding the kind of security that Israel and the Palestinians after Hamas deserve to have, moving forward with the other points in the plan to try to create an opportunity for Palestinians to have a better life and for Israel to have greater peace and security. I am very hopeful that we'll be able to see progress. Today's a good start, but we have to keep going from here.
And Secretary Rice, on that note, this is a very fragile situation, not only for the next 72 hours, but beyond. Are you confident that this is the end of this war?
Well, no one can be completely confident given the history of the Middle East, but I will say there are several elements that I hope will make this particular very important period possible for success, because as Hillary has said, there are many steps beyond this, but this step has to work first. And there are a couple of things. First of all, just to note that the Rafah crossing through which people are going to come to Gaza are moving. Hopefully that can be one that is organized and where you don't get sort of mass people trying to move at once. It's a rather narrow crossing. I negotiated the movement and access agreement there in 2005. And so just how that goes will be important. Secondly, I was glad to read that the United States is going to deploy 200 or so civil military personnel for civil military coordination, because we will have capabilities to help in getting people there, getting the humanitarian assistance organized. And so that's a step that we've not seen before. And even the verification of the beginning of the ceasefire and the movement of Israeli troops to another line was verified by Central Command of the United States. So there seems to me to be an American role in this that is, it's not being overplayed, and that's the right thing. But we have capabilities to help in this. So I would just say everybody has a stake in this working. The Egyptians will have to manage Rafah, which is not easy. But I feel better about the structure that may help us get through this first phase so that we can move on to the next very difficult phases that lie ahead.
You both make that important point, and I have to say I was speaking with a number of diplomats in the region who, by the way, said they were very excited about this conversation, given your experience and expertise, both of you. And one big question that's being discussed, of course, is once we get past stage one, what does the ideal endgame look like? Let's say even 5 years from now. Secretary Clinton, you first.
Well, I think we have to acknowledge, Norah, that as both Condi and I have said, we have to navigate this first phase successfully. And that's not self-evident. It's going to take a lot of work. It's going to take a lot of coordination. And I agree that having U.S. troops and civilian personnel involved in helping to ensure that the ceasefire takes place, that it holds, that if there is some kind of outbreak somewhere, that it can be quickly put down. Because, you know, both Condi and I have experience that is relevant to this. I negotiated a ceasefire 13 years ago, November of 2012. And, you know, it took a lot of shuttle diplomacy, as we like to say. It held for a while, but, you know, there is a lot of potential challenges to making sure that this one holds in order to get to that next phase. And it's going to require an enormous amount of planning. And I think the outline that has been shared with the 20 points provides a roadmap as to who needs to be at the table, who will be providing the security, who will be representing the Palestinians, what kind of technical expertise can Palestinians bring to the table about reconstruction? How do we make sure that Israel is, you know, assured at every step that their security is going to be maintained? So this is going to require the same level, if not greater, intensity that got us to the ceasefire in the first place. I mean, there were so many efforts over the last 2 years, as we all recall, to try to get to a lasting ceasefire, to get the hostages home. Now we've got to make sure the ceasefire holds, that Hamas delivers the hostages, and that then we have a process that people will think is credible to begin going down these 20 points to figure out how we're going to work together with Arab allies and others to implement them.
And Secretary Rice, go ahead, yes.
Now, I was just going to add, I do think this time, and here I think that the Trump administration is to be congratulated on the way that they put this together. There are a number now of important parties who have a stake in this. One of the difficult elements of doing peace in the Middle East is trying to get all the parties who have a stake in it to really be on the same page. And I will say the Qatari bear a lot of should get a lot of praise for pulling this together. But you also see that some of the Gulf Arabs have been involved in this, and their interest is in a long-term Middle East, or a better long-term in the Middle East, where they may be even able to normalize relations with Israel, as the UAE and others have, and as I think Saudi Arabia would like to. I also noticed that, you know, the Egyptians are always at the table, but somehow the Turks were involved in this. So this is a broader coalition of states that have an interest and have a lot at stake here. It is also a time when, frankly, every Arab army going all the way back to 48 until now, there are no really Arab army threats to Israel any longer. And what Israel did in disabling Hezbollah, really Iran is not the factor that it might have been when Hillary and I were doing this. And so the conditions look somewhat better to be able to move forward. The one piece that I'm most concerned about is how do you get from a kind of transitional authority of some kind, a truly representative Palestinian authority. The Palestinian Authority, which controls the West Bank, lost control of Gaza after 2006, has not really been reformed in a long time, and it needs reform. It needs younger blood. I have a lot of respect for President Abbas, but it is really time to move on to a new generation of leadership in the Palestinian Authority, perhaps to bring some of that technical expertise from Palestinians who have been abroad, because ultimately the Palestinian people have to own this solution. And we're a long way from that. But for right now, right at this moment, the Trump administration deserves a lot of credit for the broad-based support that this 20-point plan has.
It's an excellent point. And on that...
And Norah, if I could just add... Yeah, if I could just add, because I think it's important to put the context around this, as Condi did, with the dismantling of Hezbollah, with the successful attacks on Iran, and with a new regime in Syria that is looking for some kind of accommodation with Israel, this set of conditions has never existed in recent times. And so shame on us if we don't take advantage of it. And also, it should encourage the regional powers to see it as an opening that we've never had before. So the stars are aligned in a way that has not been available. And I think the Israeli government, the Netanyahu government, needs to seize this moment and make some of its own reforms. We have to build a new transitional authority for the Palestinians, but the Israeli government also has to make some hard decisions in order to take advantage of this, change in circumstances.
I want to get to some of the details that are in that 20-point plan, because I think they are interesting and they point to some of the difficulties that still lie ahead. But I also want to get each of your take, as such experienced diplomats, on the two men that have really brought us to this point, other than President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, and that is Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, two men who are known more for their business deals than making peace deals. Secretary Clinton, why do you think they have been successful?
Well, I think in large measure because both of them are seen as close to President Trump and therefore speak with a level of authority that often is questioned from others. And Jared Kushner did have an experience in the first Trump administration of working very hard on the Abraham Accords to bring about the normalization of relationships between Israel, the UAE, and others. So they come with the imprimatur of carrying the authority of the President of the United States. And I think they both have been extremely focused and diligent. I do think it's important to note, though, that circumstances play a role in any kind of historic or certainly diplomatic endeavor. And Israel's attack on Qatar opened an opportunity that both President Trump and his envoys, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, took advantage of. That was ill-advised. It was a strategic error. I think it put Israel on the back foot, especially since it didn't even succeed. And that provided an opening for both President Trump and his representatives to marshal all of the regional powers, including, of course, Qatar, but also to make it clear to Israel, no, this is now enough. We cannot continue this conflict needs to end, and we've got to move on. So they took advantage of an opening that was available and were able to be successful.
It was described to me, of course, as that strike by Netanyahu in Doha united the Arabs in a way, and it certainly angered people within the Trump administration and brought us to this point. Secretary Rice, was that an overreach by Netanyahu?
Well, if I could just add, I think it's absolutely right that it united people, but they had to take advantage of it, and they did at that moment. It could have actually exploded the possibilities for some kind of agreement, but instead kind of gathering people together and saying, all right, now we have this opportunity is important. But I just want to underscore one other point, which is that President Trump also made it very clear that Israeli security was of prime concern to him. In the attack on Iran, we all went back and forth about what would happen if the Israelis decided that they were going to make a move on Iran. And to a certain extent, the Israelis, the situation after October 7th, which was one of great shock to the Israeli body politic that could have taken place, it was a time to reaffirm that the United States was committed to Israeli security. I think they did that. But then they said, but now it's time to take advantage of the situation that Israel finds itself in, where Iran is as vulnerable to Israeli military power as it will ever be, where Iran's tentacles like Hezbollah have been disabled, where the Iraqis are no longer a threat, the Syrians are no longer a threat. And so I think it was both to show that the administration understood legitimate Israeli security concerns, but also said it's probably time now to take advantage of this advantageous position that Israel finds itself in and that the administration helped get it to.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that 20-point plan. Secretary Clinton, do you think Hamas will actually cede control of Gaza and will give up arms?
No, I don't. I think that they will try to figure out how to hold on to their intimidation of Gazans as they have practiced it for, now 20 years, basically. I think that they will try to hide and prevent the decommissioning of as many arms and armaments as they possibly can. And that's why it's really important that whatever security force is constituted to go into Gaza makes a very clear distinction between the continuing presence of Hamas, their fighters, their, hardcore people who wish to martyr themselves, and separate that from the people of Gaza. It's going to require making sure that they do not provoke some kind of response by Israel or by a security force that could set us back. I have no confidence that Hamas is in any way reformed or, ready to look for a better future for the people of Gaza or the Palestinians as a whole. And so we do have to be extremely careful in how they are decommissioned, how they are rounded up. Under the agreement, as I understand it, they can choose to leave and be given safe passage, which, of course, I hope a number of them do, but then we will have to be very clear that they can't reconstitute some kind of force in exile to try to upset whatever positive steps are being taken in Gaza.
Yeah. I would agree with that. This is going to be one of the very difficult elements. There apparently is some disagreement within Hamas as well. They're the ones who probably want to go live in Qatar at this point. There's some evidence that Hamas is having trouble paying its fighters. So one of the things that you might want to do is to make sure that Iran doesn't try to help reconstitute them, because that's really their only hope now. The Egyptians, of course, will be very much on guard to see if Hamas is being reborn, because for for Egypt, they are an extension of the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a problem for Egypt internally. So if if the U.S. intelligence and others will take a hard look at what the Iranians are doing, and at this point, I would be sending a very strong message to the Iranians. Don't even think about reconstituting these militias, we used to say in the Bush administration, if you support a terrorist, we'll treat you as a terrorist. And I think that might be a very good message to the Iranians right now, because that would be Hamas's lifeline to try to reconstitute. If they can't reconstitute, they may have to simply disarm, and they need to be sidelined. You're not going to be able to cooperate with Hamas, but you can sideline them. It also is that when you create a vacuum, which the removal of Hamas will create a vacuum, something good has to flow into it. And that's why the nature of this technocratic group that might be under some kind of international cooperation for a while to really start to provide for the people of Gaza. Every evidence is the people of Gaza are sick of Hamas. They recognize that a lot of their suffering is because of Hamas. And so if you can give the people of Gaza an alternative to Hamas, I think you have a chance to finally sideline them and ultimately dismantle them.
One thing that is
that's a long-term prospect, not a short-term.
No doubt. And we should talk about that funding for Hamas, because it was well known who was funding Hamas in the past. And how do you make sure that additional money does not flow back into Hamas? But on that note, too, one thing that's not part of this 20-point plan is a guaranteed Palestinian state. Does a ceasefire make a two-state solution more likely in the future? How do you get there? Secretary Clinton.
Well, yeah, Norah, I think it's way too soon to answer that question. I think what you have in the 20-point plan are steps that can and should be taken in order to alleviate the suffering of the population in Gaza, to reform the Palestinian Authority, to bring in new people, even from the Palestinian diaspora, who have expertise and experience in what's going to be needed to stand up a government in Gaza in order to meet the needs of the people of Gaza. The amount of work that is going to be required just to physically reconstruct Gaza, while the people of Gaza are still living there, which is a huge undertaking, but everything I've read and been told is that the vast majority have no intention of leaving, although that is part of the offer that they could go elsewhere, but most are going to stay. They need to be employed. They need to be put to work in doing all of the labor necessary to begin to rebuild. So you can't really look beyond the important outline of tasks that are in the 20 points. Now, ultimately, you know, I am still someone who believes that there has to be some kind of Palestinian entity, government entity that can meet the needs of the Palestinian people and live in peace and security with Israel. But, you know, that's not the first order of business. We have to deal with all these other concerns that are summarized in the 20-point plan.
I completely agree on an international side. I do think there are some things that Palestinians could start to do if they indeed do want one day to have a Palestinian state. Look, there have been several opportunities for a Palestinian state. The President Clinton's effort in 2000, in 2008, they were offered by Ehud Olmert something that they probably should have taken. But no less than Ariel Sharon, who was no softy on Israeli security, believed there needed to be a Palestinian state aside an Israeli state. So that's the end state that you want to get to. But for now, you're not going to get there. But here's what the Palestinians could start to do. They've got to start to recognize that Israel is going to exist and it's going to be a part of this Middle East. And that means change the lessons that you teach your kids about the state of Israel. Stop putting up maps that the state of Israel doesn't exist. Don't create another generation of Palestinians who believe that somehow the resistance is the way to peace and security. If you look at the West Bank, It's a kind of, even under occupation, a kind of functioning place, or has been. There have been Palestinian security forces that we started helping to build. Hillary, as secretary, continued that effort, and it's gone on and on. There are pieces, but the Palestinians could pay attention to those elements while the larger international situation gets to the place that you might be able to think about a Palestinian state. So I think the hard work of kind of putting together some of the pieces, that's what I would suggest to the Palestinians at this point. But it's going to be a while before you get to a two-state solution.
And I hear what each of you is saying on that. But if you talk to many of the Arab diplomats who say that their countries will be involved in rebuilding Gaza because they have the wealth, they want to know that there's going to be some endgame involved, that there will be a place for the Palestinian people.
Well, it's one thing to acknowledge
Norah,
that I'm sorry, Hillary, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Condi. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's one thing to acknowledge, as we both just did, that the right solution is ultimately to have Palestinians, as Sharon put it, governing over themselves. And that you have to acknowledge, because I don't see another solution that works. It's quite another to say, we know what the end state is going to look like, because there is so much work between now and then. So I would say to the Arabs, could you concentrate now on how to create the conditions for a Palestinian state? And that includes insisting on some reform among the Palestinians themselves.
I agree with that completely. It also requires that, for example, in the West Bank, the kind of settlement activity that has been permitted and promoted by this version of the Israeli government has to cease. Because if there's anything that would collapse what we're trying to do in Gaza, just by quickly sending a message that it's all for naught, that there's going to be continuing new settlements and settler violence in the West Bank, then that sends a message to not just Gazans and Palestinians, but to the international community that Israel isn't serious about pursuing these points that will move us all, we hope, in a better direction of more peace and security for all people. So this is a complicated, very difficult set of challenges. But, I think as both Condi and I would say, you've got to start somewhere, Norah. I mean, finally, we've gotten to the point where we have a ceasefire, and we're all hoping and praying it sticks. Where we have a path forward with very specific milestones along the way, and that it's going to require a very intense, diligent management by the United States government and other allies to make sure that everybody stays on this literally same page moving forward.
And Secretary Rice, part of this 20-point plan talks about what will govern Gaza in the future. And they talk about this transitional government and a quote-unquote board of peace that is led by President Trump. How would you expect this to work? How do you envision the role that Tony Blair might play?
Well, I worked closely with Tony Blair, as I know Hillary did, over the years. He has never lost his commitment and dedication to peace in the Middle East. He's worked at it as practically every day for the last 20 plus years. So I think he brings a certain credibility to this. I think he brings relationships to this. I remember one of the reasons we worked together was I couldn't go to Gaza as the American Secretary of State, but he could go to Gaza when we were trying to get the Olmert plan done in 2008. So I think that's a wonderful choice of somebody to be a part of it. President Trump is the President of the United States. To have the President of the United States say, I'm watching this, I'm involved in this, is important because the United States needs to back it. I don't know who the other members would be of such a transitional group. I think it's going to be important to have a kind of charter for what they actually are trying to do. But I want to return to something Hillary said. One step at a time. Sometimes if you're looking too far out, you don't really pay attention to what you need to do to make sure that the next steps work. And so step one of the 20-point plan, we're hoping holds. Step two, let's go there. And if everybody stays committed, I think you take one step. This really is one foot in front of the other. But for now, I'm celebrating personally that this horrible war in Gaza, which has had such great humanitarian costs, hostages who've been kept from their families, Palestinians who have been in dire circumstances, and Israelis who feared for their security. Maybe this is a day when that first step can be taken for all of them.
And Secretary Clinton, I know you've both talked about the patience with this and, of course, the inflamed tensions not only around the world, but certainly that we witnessed here at home, at college campuses and more. I know, Secretary Clinton, even in remarks that you have made when you've been speaking publicly, have been interrupted by protesters, shouting "Free Palestine." What do you think is important for people to know about how difficult this process is and what's occurring now in the Middle East?
Well, I certainly understand the frustration, the passion, the intense feelings that so many people, not just in the United States, but literally across the world, feel about the horrible suffering of the Palestinians and certainly the terrible consequences of October 7th on the Israelis. It is something that you have to recognize is a legitimate response to seeing the humanitarian crisis. However, everyone needs to now take a deep breath and say, we're going to end the conflict. Let's hope and pray. And now we have to do the hard work. And the hard work is literally, as Condi and I have said, day after day, step by step. You have to build some level of trust. You have to quickly get services of all kinds, adequate nutrition, medical services, some kind of temporary housing. You've got to begin to deal with the terrible needs of the people of Gaza. You've got to do everything possible to lay literally the groundwork of a rebuilt Gaza, living in peace and security and giving their children a better future. That cannot be done by merely being upset or feeling intensely. It is a hard boring of hard boards, as Max Weber famously said. You have to bring people together over and over again. You have to avoid what will be, I am sure, provocations to try to disrupt the process. You have to be focused on the final outcomes of the 20-point plan. So we are now where I hope everyone is happy we have arrived, which is this ceasefire, end of conflict, return of hostages. So let's now support this process and bring it together, not just in a nonpartisan way in our own country, but literally internationally as a great global commitment to try to bring peace, security, stability, and a better future to the Middle East.
If I could just say one thing, I live on a university campus, and I would say to young people, yes, I understand the passion, but also trying to understand how hard this is. You know, one of my colleagues asked some of the young people who were yelling from the river to the sea, from what river to what sea, and they did not know. So this is a moment for education also of why this has been hard. And there's plenty of blame to go around, but hopefully we're going to get to the place that Israelis can live in security and can finally be accepted in a region that they, by UN mandate, were given a state. Hopefully, Palestinians will be able one day to govern themselves. But I hope, too, we recognize that there are going to be ups and downs in this process. There will be provocations. There will be those who try to turn this around. And everybody just now needs to stay the course. And maybe this hopeful day in the Middle East will lead to a hopeful future.
Well, Secretary Rice and Secretary Clinton, first, thank you for your faithful service to our nation. I hope everyone understands we have someone who served in a Republican administration, a Democratic administration, and agree on so much about just how difficult the work of diplomacy is, but how important it is in educating people about the history So thank you both for this long and really fascinating discussion. And this has been a CBS News Live Conversation. I'm Norah O'Donnell in New York. Thank you.
Everyone, thanks so much for joining us here on CBS News 24/7. I'm Chanel Call, and here's a look at some of the top stories we're following right now. Positive news signs the Gaza peace deal is moving forward as Israeli troops